Well, on 30th September 2025, the military courts of the DRC came up with an unprecedented decision. It sentenced to death a former president, Joseph Kabila, of his association with the M23. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you about a meeting that happened just hours ago in Nairobi that involved Joseph Kabila and other important opposition figures of the DRC. Well, in this video as well, I'm going to tell you about opponents of Felix Tshisekedi that did not attend that meeting, as well as the positioning of Nairobi as a political hub of regional people who are not accepted by their government. Talk about the RSF, and right now we're talking about a former president who was condemned by his own country having been facilitated in Nairobi. Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification button so that when I release something new on Eastern DRC, you get notified as soon as possible. Well, as the former longtime president of DRC, Joseph Kabila, forming a resistance against Felix Tshisekedi in Nairobi, Kenya, because as it is reported, Joseph Kabila had a discreet meeting in Kenya where he invited other political leaders of DRC who are opposing Felix Tshisekedi, and that meeting went on in Nairobi undisrupted. Among the leaders who were present was Matata Ponyo Mapon, his former prime minister, who had been sentenced in May to 10 years of forced labor for alleged embezzlement of public funds, but had since withdrawn from the public eye. Other key attendees included Seth Kikuni, an opposition leader, Frank Diongo, currently exiled in Belgium, and several high-ranking members of the Common Front for the Congo, that is the FCC, which was the Kabila's coalition, such as Nehemiah Mwilanya, Raymond Chibanda, Jose Makila, Richard Muyej, Kikaya bin Karubi, and Patient Sayiba. But despite all these notable opposition figures having been present in this Kabila meeting, it is important to know that the arch-rival of Felix Tshisekedi, that is Moise Katumbi, was not present in this meeting. Despite the Kabila's coalition having invited Moise Katumbi, he did not attend that meeting and he did not send any representation to be part of that particular meeting that was held in Nairobi by Joseph Kabila. Well, what are we seeing here? These are not just opponents of Felix Tshisekedi. Some and many of these people have been condemned already by the DRC government for their participation either to be in relations with the M23 or to have embezzled funds. But one thing is in common: most of the people who met in Nairobi just hours ago by Joseph Kabila are loyalists of Joseph Kabila. We're talking about a former prime minister who served under Joseph Kabila, that is Matata Ponyo. We're talking about other leaders who are part of the larger FCC who have either been exiled, for example, exiled in Belgium, and other leaders who are not supporting Felix Tshisekedi right now as the country is undergoing a lot of political tensions. Now, many will ask, is this a deliberate political reactivation of Kabila's networks? Because as we are seeing things running right now, this is coming after Joseph Kabila was legally condemned by the military court of DRC and he was sentenced to death in absentia. That means that actively right now, Joseph Kabila is being sought by the DRC government to be apprehended wherever he will be found so that he will be taken to the country and start serving his sentence. That means that perhaps this is a way that Joseph Kabila is looking to coalesce his initial networks in DRC so that he can start to get leverage, either to oust Felix Tshisekedi or to form a strong opposition against Felix Tshisekedi. And what does the absence of Moise Katumbi indicate? And perhaps Moise Katumbi doesn't want to associate himself with leaders who have been legally condemned in DRC currently, because the president, of course, is Felix Tshisekedi. And if Moise Katumbi is in any way seen to be in relations to Joseph Kabila, of course, all that Joseph Kabila carries will now be also implicated to Moise Katumbi. Perhaps this is the reason as to why Moise Katumbi did not attend and even went further not to send any representation to that particular meeting. Further, Moise Katumbi perhaps want to leverage of the in-between. He wants people who are not very much aligned to Felix Tshisekedi, the president, and he also wants people who are not very much aligned to the Eastern DRC crisis or the conflict right now, like Joseph Kabila, who has been allegedly implicated to what the M23 is doing right now in Eastern DRC. Perhaps Moise Katumbi wants to speak to those Congolese who don't want to be associated strongly with either of these sides, and he's trying to put up his own voice against Felix Tshisekedi and also to be steadfast against the conflicts in Eastern DRC and speak to the common Congolese on how to move the country forward. But yet again, we are talking about Nairobi. And this is not the first time that we're talking about Nairobi hosting controversial political figures of the region. Just a few months ago, we were talking about Nairobi hosting the RSF, that the leaders of the RSF held a meeting and decided that they are going to form another country in Sudan. That happened in Nairobi, and of course, the government of Sudan did not appreciate that meeting being facilitated at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. That is the Government International Convention Center in Kenya. And there were repercussions from the Sudanese government that Kenya will receive sanctions of different products that were supposed to be sold to Sudan. Well, right now we are talking about yet another incident where a controversial political figure has successfully held his meeting in Nairobi. It seems as if that Nairobi has deliberately facilitated this meeting to take place. Well, Kenya might be positioning itself as a neutral and safe space for regional political dialogue, and perhaps looks forward to provide Kabila with a strategic base for discrete political recalibration. That is one way of looking at this. The other way is that all the international bodies will be very keen to what Kenya is doing right now to host these political figures, these controversial political figures of the Great Lakes, because they are wary of the position of the Kenyan government when it comes to these controversial political figures. If you're talking about the RSF, if you're talking about Joseph Kabila having been legally condemned from his country, then the UN, the EU, the African Union, the EAC, which is very important because DRC is also a member of the EAC. What will be the DRC response to the East African community, knowing that Nairobi facilitated the meeting of the former president of DRC, who has since been sentenced to death? Well, I will continue to keep you informed of the latest of what will come out from Eastern DRC right now that Joseph Kabila has started coalescing his old friends in politics of Eastern DRC. What is he up to? Keep it bona fide.